Right, factorising, harder factorising, where the coefficient of the x squared term is not 1. So we've got our quadratic expression, we're asked to factorise it. Now at the top of our exam paper we're going to write CFF, which stands for common factor first, and every time we're factorising we need to be looking for a common factor. So if we begin with this one, I can see there's a common factor of 3. 3 is a factor of all of the coefficients there. So if we pull that out first, leaving me with x squared plus 5x plus 6, just check, 3 5s are 15, 3 6s are 18. Right, and before we rush on to the next question, just have a wee look in that quadratic and see if you can put that into the double brackets and factorise it even further. And obviously 2 times 3 is 6, and I can add 2 and 3 to get 5. So now I've got 3 factors. Actually, I've managed to factorise that expression into 3 different factors. Number 2, we're looking for a common factor first. I can see 6 is clearly a common factor, 6x squared minus 6. Before we rush on, once again, just have a look in this bracket here. Now something I notice about this is that 1 is a square number, 1 squared is 1, x squared is a square number, and we're looking for the difference between the two. So this is a difference of 2 squares with no middle term, plus 1 minus 1. Square root of 1 is 1. So now I have factorised into 3 factors. And of course for all of these you can do a check, re-expand it, takes a wee bit longer. We could go 6x plus 6 by expanding those two first, then times by x minus 1, which will give me a 6x squared minus 6x plus 6x minus 6, and the middle terms cancel, and I in fact get back to 6x squared minus 6. So for all of these you could do a recheck if you need to. Right, moving on to the next one. Looking for a CFF, a common factor first. I can see that they're all even numbers, so clearly 2 would be a common factor. And before we rush on, just have a look and see if that double bracket factorises further. 2 times 2 will work, and we've factorised that one. Moving down to number 4. Looking for a CFF first, common factor. Unfortunately there isn't one, so this is harder. We're going to use the gate method, which says find 2 numbers that multiply to give you 3, 3 and 1. 2 numbers that multiply to give you 2, which will be 2 and 1. I'm just going to write them a bit closer together. And now try 3 times 2 is 6, 1 times 1 is 1. Can we use a 6 and a 1 to get 7? Obviously we can. So into my double brackets, I'm going to need a 3x and a 1x, because that will ensure I get the 3x squared term happening. Now I want to do the 3 times 2, and that will come from those 2 terms, the smiley mouth. 3 times 2 will give me 6x. And then 1 times 1, 1 times 1 will give me the 1. It's all positive, so that makes it easier. And if we were to do our check at the bottom, we'll get 3x squared plus 6x plus 1x plus 2, 3x squared plus 7x plus 2 as requested. So you have another wee look at that one. And we'll come back up to number 5, and we're looking for a common factor first. Unfortunately there isn't one, so once again 5 times 1 gives me 5, 3 times 1 gives me 3. I'm just going to write those a bit closer to the 5. Now if we multiply this way, 5 3s are 15, 1 times 1 is 1. I can't use a 15 and a 1 to get 8, that's not going to happen. So let's try crossing over. 5 times 1 would be 5, 1 times 3 would be 3, and I could use a 3 and a 5 to equal 8. So into our brackets, 5x and a 1x from those two. Now 5 times the smiley mouth, I wanted to go 5 times 1 gives me the 5. and I wanted to do 1 times 3 gives me the 3. Once again, it's all positive. Once again, you could check it in a different colour. Get rid of that. Try a check. We'll get 5x squared plus 5x plus 3x plus 3 times 1 is 3, and there's my 8x in the middle, so it works. Right, number 6, common factor first, but there's no common factor in there. 2 times 1, 3 times 1, we go across, 2 3s are 6, 1 times 1 is 1. We're not going to get a difference of 1 between a 6 and a 1. So let's try crossing over. 2 times 1 is 2, 1 times 3 is 3. Now I could use a negative 3 plus 2 would give me that negative 1 in the middle. And now the tricky part, of course, is putting it back in the brackets. So I've got my 2x and my 1x. 2 times, we decided 2 times 1, and I wanted that to be a positive 2. 2 times 1 to be a positive 2. Now we're timesing the 1x. We've used that, the 1x by the 3, and I want it to be minus 3x. Once again, you can check that. Pause now. Check it in a different colour. Make sure you agree with it. Number 7, common factor first. Once again, there isn't one. We're a bit harder this time. 5 times 1 is 5, but for 6 we have 2 options. We have a 2 and a 3, and a 6 and a 1. So I'm going to start with the 2 and the 3. I'm just going to move the 5 and 1 closer. 2 5s are 10. 3 times 1 is 3. It's not going to get negative 1 in the middle. You can't use a 10 and a 3. So that didn't work. Let's try crossing over. 2 times 1 is 2. 3 times 5 is 15. That's not going to work either. A small panic, but we can still try 6 and 1 and 5 and 1. 6 5s are 30. 1 times 1 is 1. That's not going to work, so I think it's going to be a case of crossing over. 6 times 1 is 6. 5 times 1 is 5. Now to get minus 1, we'd want the negative on the 6 and the positive. Negative 6 plus 5 would give me negative 1. So putting it back into the brackets, I want a 6x and a 1x. We want to go 6 times 1, and we want it to be negative 6, so we'll need that to be negative 6x. And then we take the 1 and times it by the 5, and I want that to be plus 5. Right, you can pause it now and check that by multiplying it back out. Good practice. Number 8, common factor first. There isn't one once again. Once again, 6 is, we can try 2 and 3. 4 has lots of options, 2 times 2 and 4 times 1, so we might be a wee while here. 2 2s are 4, 3 2s are 6. I'm trying to get negative 23, so that's not going to work. 2 2s are 4, 3 2s are 6. That's not going to work either. Lots of things we could try, so let's jump to 6 and 1. And we'll try it with the 2 and the 2. 6 2s are 12, 2 1s are 2. It's not going to get to 23. 6 2s are 12, 1 2 is 2. That's not going to work either. So the last one we're left with is a 6 and 1 and a 4 and a 1. And obviously the 6 times 4 gives me the 24. 1 times 1 is 1. So to get 23, I really need that to be minus 24 plus 1. Right, so we need a 6x and a 1x. Now what do we want the 6 to multiply by? We wanted the 6 to multiply by 4, and we want to get negative 24. And we want the 1 times 1, and we want that to be positive. So we'll get minus 24x plus 1x. And once again, you can pause and have another go. Right, back up to the next column. Number 9, let's look for a CFF. And this time we're in luck, because actually 4 would go into all of those. Pull out as much as you can. 2 would go into them as well. We'll pull out the 4. And then before we rush on, into double brackets, minus 2, minus 3. You can take your time and have a go. Pause it, see if you can get that. So I've broken it up into 3 factors. Right, this one here, common factor first. There isn't one. 16 has a lot of factors. We'll write down the common ones. There's also 1 times 16. And 1 fortunately only has 2 factors, so we shouldn't have too many options here. 2 ones are 2, 4 ones are 4. We're looking to get plus 8 or to have a difference of 8. No, we're not going to be able to use those. 2 ones are 2, 4 ones are 4, same thing, so that didn't work. Let's try 8 and 2. 8 ones are 8, 2 ones are 2. That's not going to work. Same thing when we cross over. So we're left with and of course what we did wrong over here was using 2 times 4, which doesn't work. So if I could rewind I would. Perhaps a bit slower. 4 times 4 is 16, not 2 times 4. 1 times 1 is 1. And of course that works to give you the 8x. So in the brackets we need a 4x and a 4x. It's all positive. And there's another way of writing that, of course. We could write it as 4x plus 1 all squared. So it's actually a perfect square. Right, number 11, looking for a CFF. Common factor first. 3 does actually go into 108. You could do some long division and check. 3 into 10 goes 3 times. Carry the 1. 3's into 18 goes 6. So pulling out the common factor, x squared minus 36. And luckily in the brackets, of course, this is 6 squared. So we've got x plus 6 and x minus 6. It's a difference of 2 squares. And number 12, common factor first, there isn't one. 7 times 5, probably for the 35. You could also have 1 times 35, but we'll try the 7 times 5 first. Once again, 4 times 1 and 2 times 2, so we've got quite a few options. We're looking for 27, which is quite a big number. I'm not sure that the 2's will do it. We'll try the 4 and the 1, and the 7 and the 5. Let's see what happens. 4 7's are 28, 5 1's are 5. Looking good, but not quite right. Let's cross it. 4 5's are 20, 7 1's are 7. Now I could get negative 27, of course, if they were both negatives. And of course, when I multiplied 2 negatives, I'll get a positive, so it looks like we've found the right one. So I need a 4x and a 1x. We want the 4 to multiply by the 5, and the 1 to multiply by the 7, and we decided we wanted them both negatives. Now you could pause, try expanding it back. 4x squared minus 20 minus 7 is minus 27x, and we get a positive 35 on the end.